This video is part of my philosophy of teaching series. And if I assign you to watch it, it's because you're a student in my class and I'm trying to give you some idea of what my expectations are for the class. The best definition of teaching I've ever seen is by the retired Stanford philosophy professor, John Perry. He said, "Teaching is a collaborative process between student and teacher to create desired changes in the brain of the student." Here's a picture of old John Perry from his website, johnperry.net. Now, something which is absolutely key to making desired changes in your brain is that it takes place over a period of time. You know, it is not instantaneous. You can't plug a cassette into your head and just download the new stuff that you want in there. It takes a while. So this is my fundamental claim that I'm making in this video, that time is central to the education project. When you were in high school, or well, even before then, all of your grade school years, the amount of time that you spent actually at school is roughly equivalent, is a smidgen short of the amount of time that you would spend at a full-time job. Not quite that, maybe, but pretty close. So let's say that by the time you're in high school, you're taking around 5 or 6 classes in every educational unit. I don't know if you had semesters in high school or if you were on the quarter system, but one or the other, you would have some number of classes per half year of high school, maybe 5 or 6 that you were taking at the same time, right? And you'd be at every class every day. Or I can remember when I was in junior high school, there was actually this system where there would be 6 periods per day, but you would be enrolled in 7 classes, and one class would be like a floating period, and it would substitute 1 hour each day. So that's the most classes I was ever taking at one time in grade school is 7. So 5 or 6 classes per day in high school that you go to Monday through Friday. So, and you're in the actual school campus from what, 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon-ish? So something like 7 hours a day that you are under some teacher's direct supervision with a little time off for lunch. So I'm just going to say, as a first approximation, 7 hours a day times 5 days, 35 hours a week. And presumably by the time you're in high school, you were getting at least a trickle of homework in at least some classes, but it wouldn't be a whole lot. So that, you know, that trickle of homework plus the direct adult supervision hours adds up to roughly 40 hours a week, making it the same as a full-time job. And this is one of the reasons why we have laws against child labor. It's not the only reason, but it is a reason that it interferes with their education. We feel like society is better if everybody in it learns how to read and stuff. But when you're in grade school, including and up to through the end of high school, the ratio of the amount of stuff that you were doing in a supervised way, where you were in a certain location and somebody was watching you and writing herd on you, that amount of time was large compared to the unsupervised time where you were expected to do something on your own time. That amount is small. Like if I've done the math correctly, or and if my guesses about your homework load are correct, you'd be spending, you know, 5 times as much, if not more, in class as you were spending on your homework. So I see I made it wrong on the slide. The ratio of supervised to unsupervised time is high, like 5 to 1, if not higher. I'll go back and change the slide. All right. After spending 4 years of your life at about 40 hours a week getting educated in high school, you went on to college. College education also lasts 4 years, if not longer. Okay. Do you think that the 4 years of college education that you get, and which in most cases costs you way more than your high school education cost you, do you think that that college education should provide you less total education than your high school education did? The idea is ridiculous, as soon as you articulate it. No, a college education ought to be at least as much as a high school education, if not more. You know, hopefully by then you've learned enough about education itself to get even more value out of your college years than you got out of your high school years. As we discussed, the theory of education that I'm operating under, you're reshaping your brain, you're gaining familiarity with the desired subject. And that's not just feeding facts into yourself, but training your brain in certain pathways to think in certain ways and to be able to acquire certain kinds of information and hold on to it. Okay. That brain reshaping that you do in college is not less of a time drain than what you did in high school. So if you're doing the math, the fact that, in high school, you take a class, you're in it an hour every day for 5 days. In college, that's not the case. The typical class is 3 units, AKA 3 credit hours, AKA 3 contact hours. Hour, speaking loosely, 50 minutes if it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, or under the old system. I think all the classes now are only 2-day-a-week classes, aren't they? And so it's an hour and 15 minutes each time, but the total number of minutes is the same. Anyway, so 3 units cost you a smidgen less than 3 hours of having to be there in the classroom, right? So you're taking 4 or maybe 5 such classes, as compared to the 5 or 6 classes that you had in high school, and you're meeting less frequently. So the contact hours that you had in high school were vast compared to what they are in college. So the difference has to come from the non-contact hours, where you had a trickle of homework in high school. You have a torrent of homework in college. At least you're supposed to. If you don't, your teachers are shortchanging you. You're not getting your dollars worth for your education. If you have a 15-hour learning week in college, and that's supposed to equal the 35+ hour learning week you had in high school, that difference is made up by you figuring out on your own time where you're going to fit in your study hours to do the things that your college professors ask you to do in the way of homework and projects and whatnot, all the deliverables that you do for a class, as well as on your own initiative, reading further to continue feeding your brain and developing it along the course that is most interesting to you. This is the standard recommendation that people make to undergraduates just starting college, is that for every contact hour of class, for every unit of class, you should be spending, for every one of those hypothetical in-class hours, there should be 2 outside class hours to support it. That you read the books and think about things, or study your notes if you need to, or doing your practice exercises or homework, that kind of thing. So here's the math. Just like high school, it adds up to about the same amount of time as a full-time job. That's hard if, in addition to attending college, you also have a regular old gotta pay the bills full-time job too. That doesn't leave you a whole lot of free time if you're trying to do both of those things. And in the olden days of what they sometimes still call traditional students, students didn't have jobs, college was a thing for the leisure class, and it was assumed that that's what you were going to spend your waking hours doing, is thinking and reading and writing and learning. It's a shame that where your time was protected for you in high school, or hopefully at least the most of the years of your childhood, your time was protected in that way. Maybe you got a job when you were a teenager. College students' time is not necessarily protected in that same way. I wish that it was. It would be better for education. So, if after you have completed your college degree with a BA or a BS or whatever, you then go on to graduate school, things change again. What counts as a full-time student is different again in graduate school. Graduate students typically take only half as many classes per semester as undergraduates do. 2 or 3 unit classes. But once again, is graduate education less of an education than your undergraduate education? Clearly not. The proportions have shifted again between the amount of time that you're spending supervised versus the amount of time you're spending unsupervised. So if the ratio between contact hours and self-supervised study is recommended to be 1 to 2 as an undergraduate, bump it up to 1 to 3 when you're a graduate student, if not even higher. So a teacher who's teaching you a course at the graduate level is supposed to be providing you 3 hours of instruction or conversation or discussion or whatever you would normally do in the classroom in a face-to-face context, the contact hours, and give you enough other stuff to do that takes up 2 or 3 times that amount of time outside of class. Like twice as much would be like a bare minimum, You should feel offended if your teachers are giving you less than that amount to do. Okay. I'm saying all these things like these are the numbers and it is known and everyone agrees. The fact is, some people learn really fast and other people it takes longer. That is the truth. And just like your base level reading speed can be different. There are people who read there are people who it takes them twice as long to read a book as it takes you. And there are perhaps, if you're average, other people who it only takes half as long to read a book as it takes you. And that affects things. Even for people who, like me, have the luck of being able to read pretty darn fast, even somebody like that, a real quick study kind of person, if they're spending less than 5 hours a week on the course material that they have put themselves in the path of by signing up for a class, less than 5 hours spent per week studying the thing you enrolled yourself in to learn about, you might as well be setting your tuition money on fire as to spend less than 5 hours a week actually working at it. Because you're then not making the desired changes to your brain. You're not getting that education that you and the teacher were collaborating to provide to you. And that's the truth, even if you're making an A, even if the course is set up in such a way and you have the aptitude and you're doing fine on all the assignments and you're getting it all done and you get that credential, you're still losing out on the education itself. So, like, from my experience of several decades as a teacher, this is my recommendation as a minimum. Anything you actually want to learn, do not spend less than 5 hours a week thinking about it. Okay, another caveat. I consider it my responsibility to provide in every class that I teach 3 contact hours plus other stuff adding up to about twice that amount again. But it's a little different with a creative subject, and particularly if it's a workshop class, a creative writing workshop class. It would be a mistake for me to micromanage your every single hour. Like, I think you should be spending 5 hours a week working at your craft and reading books to feed your brain. But I don't think that I should be standing over you with a whip, metaphorically speaking, for all 5 of those hours saying, do this and this and this and this in exactly this order. There's not a recipe for developing your creative mind, right? Some of those hours, and 1/3 to 1/2 of them, should be your own free play to do some freewheeling composition or some freewheeling reading. So I tried to build that into my expectations as well. And then another wrinkle comes in, of course, when we get out of the face-to-face scenario. It's still a 3-unit class, but now it's in hybrid mode, or now it's online, fully online. And what does contact hours mean in that case, you know? It's simple enough if it's a fully online synchronous class. That's just the same as a face-to-face class, except instead of, you know, putting on a full outfit that goes below the waist even, and getting on some means of transportation and getting yourself to a physical location, the only thing you have to do is plant your butt in front of the computer screen for those hours. So it's like a little bit of a time savings on transportation, but you know, in terms of contact hours, it's still, there's you under the camera and there's the teacher on the other end of the camera. In a course like the one that I'm about to teach in the spring of 2025, that course is asynchronous. And I also often teach reduced seating classes where, okay, the contact hours as such is reduced, but in order for you to not be robbed of the education that you're buying with your tuition dollar, those same contact hours are tacked on somewhere else. And in my case, the way I manage it, either for a reduced seating type class or for an asynchronous class like this one is about to be, the sort of the taking role aspect or showing up aspect comes out asynchronously in the online conversations on the discussion board on the, well, it used to be the Blackboard, but the university is about to switch to a different learning management system, one called Brightspace. Okay, so I like teaching hybrid classes, reduced seating. I like teaching online. And I often think asynchronous is necessary, even though it has certain disadvantages too. But that does not alleviate me, that does not relieve me of my responsibility of providing 3 contact hours per week. Okay, this continues to be my obligation, even if we're not doing it face-to-face, even if we're not doing it synchronously. I owe you, or in the kind of the 3-way contract between you, me, and the university, I owe the profession, you know, in order to be a decent teacher, I owe 3 contact hours per week. If we can't make any of that happen synchronously, then it will have to come out asynchronously. 3 contact hour sort of things per week, in the form of pre-recorded videos like this one you're watching now, synchronous stuff every so often if we can swing it, and asynchronous conversation on the discussion board. Okay, but that's not the end of it. That's just the contact hours side of it. There's still like the other stuff, the non-contact hours too. So I consider it my duty to provide you encouragement in addition to the contact hours to do 5 other hours worth of stuff, of reading and thinking and creating every single week. And I will do that in the form of what I call the little stuff deliverables. It's akin to a quiz or a worksheet. Adventure assignments, you'll gather adventure points over the semester. You can read up on that in the syllabus. And all of that little stuff, which will preponderate in the first 2/3 of the semester, the first 10 weeks, pretty much devoted to little stuff and encouraging you to do your adventures. And then we'll build up to a big stuff item by the end of the semester. Even though my upcoming class for spring of 2025 is scheduled to be asynchronous, I will make myself available every single week for synchronous meetings if people in the class want them. Now, you signed up for an asynchronous class, so I understand if you're like, no, the letter of the law is I get to be asynchronous all the time, and okay. That's fine. You can do all of your work asynchronously. But you might find it pleasanter and more efficient to do some things synchronously. And I recommend it, if you can, to get yourself to some of the synchronous meetings that I will make available every single week. I will do this because I want to do a good job, because I'm here to promote student success. If I will poll people and figure out what their schedules are like and figure out when to schedule synchronous, optional synchronous Zooms for those who want them. As many as 3 different times around the week, if that's what it takes to cover everybody who wants to do it, okay? So that will be available, although it will not be obligatory. Not obligatory for you. For me, it will, is my own personal understanding of my teacherly duty. Your obligation, you've got to do 3 hours worth of contact hour type stuff every single week, even though you're not coming to a classroom and you're not being compelled to put your butt in the chair and sit in front of a camera at specific hours any week. But you still, that same amount of time still needs to be spent in the sorts of things we would have been doing in a classroom if we were in a classroom together. All right. If you have to spend a whole hour and a half every single week reading discussion board postings that I put up and that your classmates put up, that's not a bug, that's a feature. That's time that you are supposed to be spending. That's why we're doing that, is to make up for those contact hours you would have gotten in a more traditional format. Okay. And those discussion board hours put in, and I will be able to tell by the way you yourself post on the discussion board whether you're reading the discussion board. And if you're not doing that, well, I'm going to mark you absent for the week. That's what we have instead of taking roll in an asynchronous class. All right. The rest of the 3 contact hours will be performed by looking at videos like this and or coming to optional Zoom sessions if you can make that work and if you want to. If you haven't heard the term HyFlex, you've probably heard the term hybrid. You know what that is. Some of the time is spent in face-to-face, and some of that time is replaced by online time. In a HyFlex situation, not necessarily everybody in class has to meet the course requirements the exact same way. And this is my philosophy of online teaching. People have all different reasons for wanting to take classes online. I strongly urge you to participate in some of the synchronous programming that I will be offering if you can, but I do not require it, all right? If you're there synchronously, if we have a conversation and I see you face to face and we're talking and you and your peers are interacting and I see that happening, that is meeting some of your contact hours obligation. If you're not coming to the synchronous Zooms, you got to do more on the discussion board that shows me that you're watching the videos, that shows me you are still plugged into the conversation, only asynchronously. there's like, you can consume the course materials in accordance with your own needs and conditions, basically. The average person is going to be better off getting some of the contact hours synchronously, but you may not be average for whatever reason. And there will be a way. If you can't or don't want to do anything synchronously, there will be a way around it for you to work all asynchronously. That's what I mean by HyFlex. In terms of non-contact hours, you're going to be given reading assignments. That will probably be the largest hour per hour drain on your time is reading some books. I'm going to give you little stuff assignments, probably about 10 of them for the first 10 weeks of class. And the need for you to produce the little stuff deliverables week by week should keep you on track with your reading and in some cases watching videos. But ideally, even during those first 10 weeks of class, you'll be doing more stuff. The little stuff deliverables aren't going to take up all of your, let's say, 5+ non-contact hours. In the average week, it's not going to take you 5 whole hours to do the reading assignment and then do a quiz or a whatever. So you'll have time left over that you should be spending on other stuff. And that's where the adventure points come in. We'll talk about this again, or you'll read about it in the syllabus, what I mean by adventure points and how to accumulate them, right? But the adventure points are you kind of assign stuff to yourself to take up the requisite amount of time per week to feed your brain, to keep you exercised and active for the training process that education is, and also to move you forward toward the big stuff project. At about the 10-week mark of the semester, I will quit micromanaging you with little stuff assignments, and we'll move on to the big stuff era of you working on a project. And we'll talk about this again in the future too. But let's say the big stuff assignment is like a research paper. By the time I receive your big stuff assignment on the last day of the semester, or hopefully a week before the last day of the semester, it should look to me like you put 40 hours of labor into it, right? That's what I mean by big. People ask for a page count. Well, it makes more sense to give an hours count, really. When you hand me your final stack of pages, electronically speaking, virtual pages, and I read through it, I should think, yeah, that person spent 40 hours working on that. Your best strategy for getting something that looks that good, that done, and that polished by the end of the semester is to have started on it at least at the beginning of the last full month of the semester. So for the upcoming spring, that would be April. Like by April 1, you should know what you're trying to do for your big stuff assignment and should be like underway and moving on it so that you have that whole last month to spread 40 hours of labor around on. Hopefully, well-chosen adventures that you've done in between the start of the semester and the end of the semester will give you like a head start on the big stuff project. All right. I said this already, but I'm going to emphasize it again. There is a sweet spot in between spending too little time and too much time, right? The so-called Goldilocks zone. If you are putting less than 5 hours into your weekly maintenance type labor in any class, it's a mistake. Okay, you're treating that class as a throwaway class if you do that. And if you're a really smart person and a really fast reader and sort of like good at getting the knack of things, like I'm not saying it never happened that a student got through my class spending less than 5 hours a week and even earned an A. Yeah, sure, that could happen. But that's not the average outcome. And even if you are that kind of highly efficient student that can get through it that fast and earn that kind of grade, it's still a mistake in my opinion. You should be using this like opportunity to make this class work for you toward achieving your longer term goals, whether that's as an artist or as an academic or kind of both. If it's only taken you 3 hours per week in the beginning of the semester, great. Put those two hours toward thinking about what you want to do for your big stuff project, toward reading other stuff to feed your brain. Okay. And I am happy to give advice if you're like, I did that homework so quickly, what will I do next? Sit around and twiddle my thumbs? Or, I can offer advice on reading, or we can have a conversation about it. On the other extreme, if you find that you are faithfully putting in 10 hours of labor into my class every single week, and you're still not staying on top of stuff and falling behind, and it's like on the average week, it's taken you way more than 10 hours to get through the reading and get through the videos and do the little stuff assignments and keep up on the discussion board, make an appointment to talk to me about it and we'll brainstorm. Again, because everybody's different, every brain is different. It's no one size fits all. I cannot say that there is no student that ever faithfully put in the time I asked for and still couldn't make it work. But it's pretty rare. And I will make you this guarantee. If any student in my class that makes me believe that they are putting in 8 to 10 hours of labor every week is not going to flunk the class, no matter what. So check in with me for individual fine-tuning. All right. In the upcoming semester, I'm teaching English 6353. This is a course which is required for every single student to take. And for that reason, I thought it was best to make it asynchronous. So it's possible for every student to take it, no matter what the rest of their schedule is like. But I know from bitter experience that if I got a student who's enrolled in, let's say, 3 graduate classes, and the other 2 are either face-to-face or synchronous, and mine is the asynchronous one out of the 3, it's super easy for a student to work first for the synchronous classes and keep on procrastinating on the async course. And it's always the lowest one down on their priority scale. That's bad. It's bad for me. It's bad for the course as a whole. And it's bad for you because you won't get a good outcome in the class. So I'm going to try to help the students in class prevent this bad outcome by my plan of taking roll every single week. And I will let you know, if you aren't making it, if you aren't attending asynchronously to the discussion board every single week, I will let you know how many absences you have, and you can get kicked out for excessive absences, just like in a regular old face-to-face or synchronous class. So that's from my side, I'm going to attempt to prevent the bad outcome by doing that. On your side, here's what I suggest for you to prevent this bad outcome of and it's so natural, the other classes are in your face every Monday or every Tuesday or whatever day it is that you do that class. And it rolls around and here it is Monday, I got to do this now. And my class, it's not on a particular day. You got to force yourself to make a time budget where you carve time out for this asynchronous class, all right? Carve out that time. Have protected time in your schedule that you impose on yourself. I'm going to say 1 hour every other day during the week. However you can make that work. 1 hour every other day without fail. That's not so much. Even a busy person can make that work, all right? And then another designated 4 to 6 hour catching up chunk that you're going to do whenever you have space in your work week. For most people, that might be the weekend, but like, I don't care when it is, but just give me this much. Give me the 1 hour every other day regularly, plus the 4 to 6 hour chunk somewhere else in the week. All right. This is doable. This is achievable. Even for a busy person, this can be done. All right. That's my TED Talk on the significance of time and time management in this asynchronous class. So check your weekly chore list to see if there are any other videos you need to watch besides this one. Take a look at the syllabus. It'll be available on the Brightspace page. And I will see you soon, whether that's synchronously or on the discussion board.